So we're going to talk endorsements in education, which they are fantastic, and hopefully you'll see what a benefit they can be toward you and your future teaching career. So we'll go ahead and get started. Nope. Maybe we'll get started. I can figure out how to. Oh.
Maybe on the screen if you press the second slide.
There we go. Okay, here we go. All right, cool. Okay, so first is just even knowing what endorsements are. And some of you guys may know this already, but if you don't, we're just going to start from the beginning because that's helpful. So endorsements are an area of study. They're your specialty. So to kind of give you an idea, when you come here to Whitworth and you get ready to graduate and you've finished your student teaching and everything, Whitworth will certify you in a specialty area, and under that you have your endorsements. So the state issues you your certificate of teaching, which allows you to teach at a certain grade level. And with your certificate, Whitworth recommends certain endorsement areas that you have completed classes and requirements in. So for example, you could be a math major, and when you graduate, you will have a certificate in teaching and an endorsement to teach math. If you also complete all your requirements for English language learners, then that endorsement would be added to your certificate when you graduate and Whitworth recommends you. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense, but I know it gets a little sticky. So these content areas is another way that we refer to endorsements here, because they're that area of specialty. Here, where it gets a little sticky is if you're elementary education, it feels like there's a bigger divide for you where endorsements are pretty clear. You're an elementary education major and you have all these things that you do, and then you have any extra endorsements that you add on. For secondary education, you automatically are starting off with your certificate and pursuing your endorsement, so in different content areas. So like I said, as a math major, if you're a secondary math major, you're getting essentially a double major. You're getting your full math degree, your full secondary education degree, and you'll be exiting with an endorsement in math. So, where there is often confusion is the difference between minors and endorsements. When you get out into the world and you're in your teaching career, the schools are not going to care very much about what you minored in. That's something for you, it's added experience, but what they're really looking for is your endorsements. And when you're here at Whitworth and you're pursuing either one of these, it really is just a credit difference. So a minor might be a few more credits than an endorsement or vice versa. So you just have to look at that when you're pursuing and choosing. But always, 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 I would say go for an endorsement over a minor because it will help you more in the long run. The registrar's office, because endorsements are really certification specific, the registrar's office here is not going to put that on your program eval when you're going after things. So you might see an ELL minor on your program eval, but you're not going to see your reading endorsement listed there, if that makes sense. So that's something that you want to keep in mind because it just requires a little bit more tracking for you personally, as opposed to that great program that has everything listed in self-service for you. So you just have to kind of pay attention to that. With that said, we still do need to know as the School of Education which endorsements you're pursuing so that we can advise you best. So even though it's not something that goes on your program evaluation, our advisors want to make sure that you get to accomplish everything that you want to. Within reason, if you're going after 10 endorsements, they might tell you it's too many. But they need to know that in order to advise you well. And as you'll see in a little bit here, I'm going to talk about how some of the endorsements are actually really easy to get, and you'll be closer than you realize to getting them, but we'll see that in a second. Okay, so why would you even care about endorsements? Well, one reason is reciprocity. So when you graduate here and you get certified, you're certified to teach in Washington State. Washington State has reciprocity with several other states. However, there's sometimes kind of a little asterisk there. For example, the state of California, if you plan on going back to California because that's where you're from and that's where you want to teach, one of the things that you're going to want to consider is pursuing an ELL endorsement, because in California, they want you to have that. And you will have to take a ton more classes once you get down there and won't be able to teach right away if you don't have that ELL endorsement. So even knowing where you're going to go back to teach is helpful for your advisors, and even just for you in your planning in which endorsements that you should be pursuing. So reciprocity is key, and different states have different requirements, so it's just something that you'll want to look into. The OSPI website is really, really helpful with that. You can go there and get information at any point, and they will tell you which requirements for different states. The other reason you want to think about endorsements is marketability. It makes you a better candidate if you have a couple of endorsements. Doesn't mean that you're not going to get a job if you don't have any, but it just puts you one notch above somebody else who might not have as many. I would say this, though, this is the caveat: be careful about which endorsements you add just to get a job, because I can think, for example, for special education, a lot of schools are looking for people with special education endorsements, but they want people who are passionate about special education, and they're going to put you in a special education classroom if you have that endorsement. So if you don't love it, don't go after it. But know that it does help you get a little further. It might help you get that job that you need, because that's what they might be looking for. Okay, there's lots of endorsements available, but Whitworth doesn't offer every single last one of them. We have a lot, though, which you will get to see. So just to kind of go over, there are 3 majors that are also endorsements: elementary education, secondary education, and special education. And those numbers that you see there next to it are the grade levels that it covers. So those are what you can major in and also receive an endorsement. There's 3 minors that you can minor in within the education program. English language learners and reading minors will give you the endorsement as well. Special education you can minor in, but you don't get an endorsement with just the minor. You have to kind of look at what other credits are needed in order for you to hit that endorsement mark. All of the endorsement requirements are listed in the catalog, either online or hard copy, whichever you have access to. So you can always do that, or you can come see me and I can help you find it as well. But these are all the other available endorsements from the School of Education. So there are a lot here. There's lots of opportunities. Lots of these are secondary education. They're full programs is what they are, but not all of them. So if you're interested in any of these, definitely have that conversation with your advisor. The asterisk there next to gifted education is that's a specialty endorsement that can only be received with a master's degree. So we do have that program here, and we've got a great program called Step Up that allows you to get some credits towards gifted education while you're an undergraduate, but you won't receive that full endorsement until after you graduate and you're in the master's program for gifted education. Some of these I will say also, we don't necessarily recommend that you take only that endorsement. So one of the ones, for example, that's popped up for us several times is people who come and they want to do theater as their main endorsement. Theater's great, but that's not something we recommend to be your only endorsement, only because of that marketability piece. If you're going to look for a job after the fact, they want somebody who has more than just theater as an endorsement. that might be great, but there's only going to be so many theater classes you might be able to teach, and so they want to know that you can teach some other things as well. Okay, now here's the fun part. All right, so how will I have time to add this to many of my, this many classes to my major? The education program has a lot of classes, which you guys will know. You're looking at these classes going, oh my goodness, that's a lot. We're gonna have to pack in every semester. And that's true. However, the cool thing is that depending on which endorsements you're going after, you might already be taking many of the classes. So one of the common combinations is elementary education, reading, and ELL. Because if you're pursuing your ELL endorsement, you only have to take one other class to also get your reading endorsement if you're an elementary ed major. This is really, really easy to do, particularly because that second point there, the 20 credit area of concentration that has been part of elementary education, they just changed the WAC so that that is no longer a required thing. So, for those of you who may not be very far into the program, that might not make any sense to you at all, but it used to be that in addition to the elementary education major, you had to have 20 credits of an area of concentration, and reading didn't count. So if you were pursuing ELL or you're pursuing special education, you could use that for that, but otherwise you had to come up with all these different classes to kind of combine into a specific area of concentration. That is no longer a requirement, which frees you up to be able to pursue more endorsements that will actually help you get jobs and give you specialty. So that makes that reading and ELL combo even more doable with just one class difference. So I definitely always tell people who are already doing the ELL endorsement, if you just take one more class, you can do your reading endorsement as well. That's a great thing to have under your belt. The special education endorsement also is if you're in any of the education majors, a lot of those classes cross over, you're already taking them. So definitely look at that. Another one that is really amazing and fairly new is the environmental studies endorsement. And if you can catch that one early enough on, a lot of your gen eds can count towards that endorsement if you take the right gen eds. And then you can have this environmental studies endorsement, which is fantastic. So a lot of these are things that you need to think about and then definitely bring up with your advisor to be able to plan kind of strategically which ones to do. But again, depending on what your endorsements you're pursuing are, you may not be that far off. For secondary, it's a little bit more difficult, but it's not impossible. And again, depending on a lot of secondaries also add on an ELL endorsement. And a lot of those classes that you're already required to take, you're already taking some of them in your general ed classes. So it's not too hard to grab those. So I definitely recommend doing that. Oops. Okay, what questions do you guys have? That's a lot of information, it's a lot of babbling, and I know what I'm saying, but you might not. So what can I answer for you? Yeah.
How important is it to match endorsements together? So I'm secondary. I'm doing physics. Is it important that, like, it would make a lot of sense to grab like a language arts endorsement, whatever.
Right.
So I'm doing physics. I'm looking at like math or like chemistry. Chemistry would stay like the sciences. Do schools care so much? I guess the compatibility between the two endorsements, or is it like, oh, you have this endorsement and that endorsement, and that's what we need right now?
That's kind of how it is. It's just a matter of what they need at the moment. So it's not so much a matter of keeping it in the same area for schools. It's definitely easier for you to achieve multiple endorsements if you're kind of in the same area, because then you'll get some crossover there, right? Yeah. But it doesn't matter as much for schools.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so One, how long does the master's program take, and do you recommend doing the step-up program?
It depends on which master's program you pursue. There are a lot, and so it just sort of depends. I absolutely would recommend, if you know you're going to pursue that master's program, absolutely start talking to your advisor now about step up, because that will help you a ton. Mm-hmm.
You mentioned like linking the ELL endorsement with the reading endorsement, and
Mm-hmm.
I was just wondering like what kind of opportunities would you have as a person who pursues that? Like what kind of job opportunities would you have with that, and what the differences are between them?
Yeah, absolutely. So ELL is something that a lot of schools are looking for you to have. It's not required by any means, but if you have that ELL endorsement, a lot of schools really love that, because we're seeing more of that need in schools, which is great. And reading often kind of works a little bit with that ELL endorsement. When you're looking at literacy and things like that, a lot of those go hand in hand. So I would say, particularly for elementary education, reading is something that a lot of schools are looking for, and ELL is a nice bonus. They're wanting people who can work with their English language learner students, and not everybody, that wasn't something that was pushed a while ago, so it's a newer sort of push for students to be coming out with that endorsement, and so it puts you a little bit up for that. Yeah.
Isn't there like a test you have to take to get your ELL endorsement?
Yes, that's a great question. So all of your endorsements do require a test. I think that you guys will probably you should keep your eyes open, because I'm sure that there's going to be one of these wonderful gatherings for NES and West testing. But the NES and West E tests, it just depends on which endorsement you're going after. They all used to be West E, is what they used to be, and they're slowly migrating to NES testing. But each endorsement area requires you to take a test. So even as elementary education, there are 2 subtests that you have to take to get your elementary education endorsement. And then for each additional one, there are endorsements that you have. There's a test that you need to pass. So some of them, all of the ones that get added on here, when we recommend you, Whitworth recommends you, and you attach to your certificate at that recommendation point, need to have some classes attached. But if you're looking after the fact and you're looking at your schedule and you think, gosh, all I can do is these 2 endorsements because I don't think I can fit in anything else, get those endorsements. But then after you graduate, there are some endorsements that don't require a program for you to take the test. So there are some that require a program plus the passing of the test, but there's many that don't require a program at all. So you can just study and take a test and have that endorsement as well.
Okay, and then, so do we take the test before we graduate, or is that like after? And then do we take it like kind of through Whitworth, or do we have to go in on our own time and take it?
Right, great questions. So you will take them before you graduate. Your primary content area, so for elementary, that would be elementary education. For secondary, would be whatever area. So Carl, what is your actual primary content area? Because I know it is physics. Okay. So Carl is physics. So he would need to pass his physics endorsement test before he student teaches. As elementary education majors, you have to pass your 2 subtests before you student teach. And then any additional endorsements before you graduate. They are not done here at Whitworth. There's national testing sites or statewide testing sites that they have. But we can help you get signed up if you're having problems with that. And we kind of help you track that as well. So your department will help you kind of see, oh, you've said that you want to do a Spanish endorsement. Great, you need to get on that test now. So we kind of try and help with that timing. A lot of them are not taken until later in your program because you need to have the content first, right? So for elementary education, when you've got 2 subtests that you have to take, your faculty and your advisor will tell you when you need to do those. So one of them is, during a certain time in your junior year because you've just completed that content, and the other one is a certain time, so that they make sure that you've got everything that you need information-wise. Yeah.
How do those subtests work if you're double majoring, like say in elementary education and special education? Do you take 4?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, because special education only has the 1 test.
Okay.
So you would have 3 total.
Okay.
You would be told, you would probably be advised to do your elementary education ones before student teaching. Though if you can manage to get them all done before student teaching, then great.
Okay.
So for those of you who are in the program and you're elementary ed majors, you take it's really backwards because you take subtest 2 before you take subtest 1, just because of how the program runs. But you take your subtest 2 during your 300 block and your subtest 1 during your 400 block. And the faculty who are in charge of those block classes, they'll tell you when you need to be doing that and getting out there. For special education, you want to probably wait until you're also doing the 400 block or whatever, about that time frame, and then you can take it at any point after that.
Okay.
But yes, you would have to take 3. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I was just wondering if there's a fee to take the test.
Yes.
And if you don't pass the test, is there a way to retake the test?
Yes, excellent question. So yes, there are fees for the tests. If you have been in the 200 block and received your red folder of fun, there's a lovely little fee sheet in there. If not, then you have something to look forward to. And they actually just lowered the fees, which is great news because it's the one thing about education, right? You guys are going to be going out and being teachers. You're not like up here with the CEOs raking in the big bucks, right? But you have all these fees in your undergrad, and that's really hard, and we recognize that too. But these tests, yes, I believe that the fee is $96 for your content exams. And then if you don't pass, then you have a period of time, I want to say it's 30 or 40 days maybe, before you can retake that test. So one of the things you want to keep in mind is you're getting close to student teaching. You don't want to wait until a month before your student teaching to try and take your exams, because if for some reason you don't pass, then you don't have time to retake it in order to student teach. So it's something that you just want to think about. But if it's if you're seeing that you need to take it multiple times, again, there's ways that we can kind of help with those fees and stuff, because you do have to pay every time. Yeah.
I guess, so the only thing I'm worried about is, so if I do student teaching senior year, is there going to be content on the test that I wouldn't have learned yet because I haven't completed all of it yet?
No, that's a great question. Your student teaching semester is you in the classroom. So you'll have some seminars where you're learning things, but a lot of it is really specific to yet another test that you have to take called the EdTPA. But mainly you're in the classroom bell to bell. So you're not getting, your learning is experience at that point. You are doing it. You are putting everything you learned into practice. So you're not going to have to worry about having missed content at that point, depending on when you do your student teaching block. I will say that as a caveat, because there are some students who maybe do student teaching in the fall because they only have a few other classes they have to finish up in the spring. Typically, you're not advised to take classes in the spring that you would need for any tests or whatever that you have to take. It would be maybe some gen ed classes or something.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Do you know when we have to take the NES and the West E? Like, is there a specific time you'd recommend we take them?
Like of the year or in your program?
In the program.
Yeah, usually you want to do it the semester before, well, depends on if you're elementary or not, because elementary has those 2 subtests. But for the most part, you want to take them that semester before student teaching. So anytime during that, again, sooner in the semester is better because then you can finish it. But again, if you're elementary education, you take subtest 2 during the 300 block and subtest 1 during the 400 block. Yeah.
Is it offered in the summer? Because like I'm student teaching in the fall, so or do I just take it in the spring?
You would take it in the spring.
Okay.
You can take the tests. I believe that there are testing centers open over the summer,
Okay.
but we start to get nervous on your behalf because you're not on campus and we can't help like kind of ping you that this is coming up, and we don't want you to get back on campus in the fall to do student teaching and not have that test pass. So
Okay.
we're going to really push hard for you to do it in the spring.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there anything stopping me from just registering for NES Test, taking that, and getting that endorsement without doing any extra classes?
The only thing that would stop you is it depends on the endorsement because, like I mentioned before, there are some endorsements that require program plus the test. So, for example, health and fitness. This is a program that requires, or this is an endorsement that requires the program plus the test.
Okay.
So it kind of depends. But Carl, I mean, you've done this actually, right? Haven't you passed a?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
took the physics NES last year. I think last year, maybe in year 4.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
did
like
most of
early
it
on.
in high school.
Because you had a lot of your content in high school, and
Right.
so I think you were advised like, hey, this is fresh, do it now, right?
Right.
So, so yeah, I mean, you can take it earlier. If you want to give it a go, then go for it.
For like other endorsements though.
Yeah, you can, if you want to. That's up to you. Go for it. We're not stopping you from that, but there are some, I would say special education would be another one that I would say you might want to be careful because you want to make sure you have enough of that content to be able to confidently pass that.
Sure.
So, but there's no reason you can't like pay the fee and take a stab at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Like math or chemistry, those don't need extra.
There's
How
a
do we know?
I can maybe, Landon, I can send this to you and maybe you can send it out. I have a spreadsheet of which ones require which tests, whether it's NES or WSD, and whether they're a program and test endorsement or whether they're just a test only endorsement. So you guys can take a look at that if you want. That might be helpful because it's really split, so it's hard to remember which ones off the top of my head, yeah. Yeah.
How long does the test take? Is it like an all-day thing?
It's not all day.
I have it sitting right here. It says it's not.
It's like 2 hours or something, I say, to block out 2 to 3.
It
Is that what it says?
actually says to block out 5 hours and 15 minutes. But that's ridiculous.
Yeah, okay.
That's a lot. That's like, so you have extra time on it.
Yeah.
It says 150 multiple choice questions.
Okay. So yeah, so it kind of gives you an idea. And the nice thing is that you receive your score right there. So when you're taking it, you'll get your score. It won't get sent to Whitworth for us to see for a couple of weeks usually, and then it's officially recorded for you in your files and everything for certification, but you get to see it right away, which is great. So then you can kind of breathe a sigh and you don't have to wait. So that's a good thing. Yeah. These are great questions.
I don't know if this is going to be helpful or hopefully not stressful, but the passing score, it says 220.
Yeah.
At least for this, out of 300,
Yeah.
I believe.
Yep, 220. And if, this is another thing, there are some of the endorsements, most of them are not too bad, but there's a few that are just known to be a little stickier. And so just for your awareness, you just have to be in petitionable range for student teaching. So if you don't quite hit that 220 mark and pass it for student teaching, you have to be within 10 points. So you have to have a 210 between a 210 and a 220. And then you can petition to student teach. And then you'll just have to take it during your student teaching time. So if you're really stressing out about it because you're like this close to passing and you just couldn't get there, you can that's put in place so that you can still continue through student teaching and work on passing that test while you're in student teaching. I wouldn't depend on that though, just because the TPA is a really big deal and that's going to consume a lot of your time in student teaching. So the more of these tests that you can do beforehand, the better it's going to be. Less stressed you'll be anyway. Okay. Well, I did bring a few of the certification plans. They're not every endorsement we have, but if anybody's curious and just wants to kind of take a look at some of the other endorsement areas and what might cross over, I'll have those here for you to take a look at. And again, they're all in the catalog as well, so you can take a look online. And I mean, your advisors and myself, anybody can answer any questions you might have as well. So.